Welcome to John Gets Games. Today I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Steampunk Rally. This is a kooky game where you're going to be drafting cards in order to get lots of crazy pieces to put together into these crazy mechanical racing contraptions as you race through the Alps to try to get to the finish line first and go as far beyond it as you can. You have drafting, die rolling, and a bunch of engine building, and a lot of exploding machines. I'll explain the game as I'm playing it, so let's jump right in. Steampunk Rally is a racing game, and here is the racetrack. I randomly put some of these tiles out, and essentially, once somebody crosses the finish line, we go one more round, and the person who got the farthest along the tail is going to be the winner. So that's the end goal, is to be the farthest on this track. Our 3 racing scientists begin here at the start location. Here are the 4 different types of cards in the game. We have gold, silver, bronze, and boost cards. The first thing we do on each turn is the players draw the top card from each of these stacks, so each player will have 4 cards in their hand. And now we're going to do a traditional draft, where each player is going to pick one of the cards from their hand, and they're going to pass the rest of the cards that are not chosen in the clockwise fashion, and then they're going to get 3 cards from their opponent, and they're going to keep picking. So let's start looking into the hand that we got, and we'll just see the cards that the other opponents give us. We will be playing as the nuclear physicist Lise Meitner, and this is the unique pilot card that's associated with the scientist, and then each scientist also has a secondary card that is unique to them. So now let's look at the hand of cards that we were dealt, and we obviously have one of each type because we drew from the top of those stacks, and we could do a couple different things. The first thing we can do, and obviously we're picking one of these cards, is you can always just discard this card for the bonus in the top right. So in this case, I could discard this card to take 2 blue dice or 2 cogs. Likewise, this card could be 2 yellow dice and 2 cogs, etc. all the way on. In fact, this boost die is a little bit more variable. Another thing we can do if we choose one of these machine parts is we can add it into our actual racing machine here. And there's no cost associated with that. You just have to kind of take the card and try to add it into the machine. But it's important to note that we have these little valves here. This is what dictates whether or not a machine is legal. When you put this piece down, you have to be able to trace connected valves from the card you placed all the way back to the pilot vehicle right here. So right now, there's no legal way to place this. But at any point in time, you can rearrange your machine. You just rip it apart and put it all back together again. And now you can see we have completed valves here, and we can trace it all the way back to the module. So knowing that, let's take a look at the various parts that we have in our hand and what we might want to put down. This top one is quite simple. It's a generator. We can put blue dice only down into these slots, up to 4 of them. And when you put dice down, you add up all the pips, and then you divide that by 2, and then you're going to get that many yellow dice from the supply, which you can then roll and use during that turn. We've got the arachno legs here, and this one you can put yellow dice down, and the summation divided by 3 is going to give you movement or armor, which I'll explain both of those in just a second. And then here we have polarized shielding, and this one can just turn yellow dice when you divide their pips by 3 into shields. The last type of card in the game are these boost cards, which are one-time use events, essentially, that happen when the card tells you that they happen. This one says cheat. You get 1 smooth movement, which is this golden wheel with a wing icon. If your invention consists of fewer than 8 parts, you get 2 smooth movements if it consists of fewer than 5. Right now, our invention only consists of 2 parts. We might add a little bit more on in this round, but this is a pretty strong thing because there are 2 different types of movement. There's regular and there's smooth, so let's take a look at the difference. On the racetrack, there are several symbols kind of scattered around, and the most common one is this little mountain with a number on it. And now this is the terrain damage that you're going to suffer when you move into that spot. So that when you go to this place, you're going to take 1 damage to your invention. Now that's only if you're using a regular movement. If you use a smooth movement, which is that golden symbol, then you would get to ignore all of the damage that you would get. So right here there's a 1, right here there's a 2, there's a 3 over here. So having smooth movement at a specific time is very good for us. So I think we're probably going to want to keep this cheat card, but just for kicks, let's take a look and see if these actually make sense. Now, we don't really need to make yellow dice right now, so this generator isn't particularly good for us. This one right here, we could turn yellow dice into regular movement or shielding, which protects us from damage. But again, right now we have red dice, and we have a special ability to remove red dice, so this doesn't particularly do much for us. This one is interesting because we could discard it to get 2 red dice, and we're going to need to get red dice at some point to try and use this to make movement happen and then use our ability to remove it. So we could discard this for 2 red dice, and its main ability is just protecting for damage. I think that these are all not the best cards for us, so let's go ahead and choose the cheat, and then we're going to pass these cards to the next player. And when you take a boost, you put it underneath your damage gauge, and you can use it whenever you want to, as long as it matches the timing on the card. The next player is Thomas Edison, and they decided to build arachno legs. Now this isn't going to fit with their engine right now. You can kind of move this over here and then put the legs down there. Now it is totally okay to have two different types of ground. The game doesn't worry about that. It's all about matching the valves. And finally, we have George Carver over here, who, if you'll notice, has no latent movement abilities on their cards. He's just really good at making armor and some cogs, and I'll explain why cogs are good in just a little bit. So he is going to be building hover jets. This is going to give him the ability to move or get armor, which he probably doesn't need. And also, this little icon lets you remove dice, and I'll show you why removing dice is very important later. He'll go ahead and stick his hover jets right there. Alright, so now we get to choose from these three cards, and right off the bat, this coal burner is very interesting. You might notice this little light bulb icon, and you might have noticed that there's one of them on our main pilot module, and we have this here. Now this, you get to turn off once per round, once we're racing, and you activate every single part of your invention that has a light bulb icon on it. So essentially, it's a once per turn effect. This one right here is just a once per turn effect to get a red die, and we know that right off the bat, we want red dice in our engine, so we're probably going to get this one, but let's look at the other options. This treads, it turns blue dice into regular movement and armor, which is nice, but not particularly great for what we're trying to do right now. Tesla coil, this would just give us 3 yellow dice and everybody else would get 1 yellow die. We don't have any need for that, so I think we'll do the obvious thing and go for the coal burner, and we'll go ahead and stick it right there. Thomas Edison has decided to discard this generator, and he's going to turn it into 2 cogs, which you take from the supply and you put them in your area, and I'll explain why these are very important in just a minute. And George Carver has decided to discard this generator in order to take 2 blue dice from the supply. Now these don't get rolled yet, they get rolled right at the beginning of the race phase, and I'll explain all that very shortly. So we got a flywheel. Now this is interesting. It would allow you to store unused dice on this card between different turns. Normally you have to get rid of all dice that you did not use, so this is just kind of a nice storage card. And then we have this Faraday cage, and we see it says you gain a yellow die and an armor, but it also says that you could play this right after somebody else does a boost, and it cancels their boost. And we know that we have a boost card here that we want to use. This is kind of mean, but we really do want red dice in order to activate this. We have to think, will the Tesla player want to use this? And they do like the yellow dice, and this does remove yellow dice from your area, which is quite good. I think we need to make sure that they don't get access to this Faraday cage, because I think Edison would actually use it. So let's discard it, and we can do that for either 1 red die, or a blue or a yellow, or 2 cogs. Now, we can't guarantee that the last card that's going to come to us is going to have red dice on it, and if it doesn't, then we're only going to roll 1 red die this turn, which isn't great. So I think let's discard this card, and we're going to get 1 die from the bank in order to roll. Thomas Edison decides to discard these treads here to just get 2 more cogs for his area. And George Carver is going to discard this card to grab 2 cogs from the supply as well. So the last card we were given is Arachno Legs. Now, this does let us move somewhat well when you divide by 3, or it could let us get armor, which means, I guess, it's really good at climbing over the mountain so you don't take the damage. But it requires yellow dice, and we don't have any yellow dice right now, so we wouldn't be able to use it on the first turn. We could discard it to get yellow dice, but we would do nothing with them and lose them. So I think for now, let's just discard this card to get these 2 cogs. And the reason for that is these cogs are used to not only reroll dice if you need to in the race session, but you can also spend these to increase the value of the dice. So if we rolled a 5, we could spend one of these and make it a 6. And of course, 6 divided by 3 is 2, and so we could get better divisors when we're trying to make this movement happen. And then lastly, these are good for clearing dice out of your engine because they're going to gum up the works. I'll explain how that all works very soon, but having cogs is a good thing, so let's go ahead and get them. Thomas Edison decides to build this flywheel into his invention. This is again the one that lets you store dice between rounds. And George Carver is going to discard this Tesla coil to grab 2 more cogs. Alright, so the drafting phase is over. We would normally now go into the vent phase where you get rid of dice from your invention, but you always skip that on the first turn of the game, so let's jump right into the race. Now the great thing about this phase is that all players get to do all their actions at the same time, but I'll show you each player in order. The first thing that everybody does is they take all of the dice they've acquired currently and they roll them. Now at this point, we could do all sorts of things in whatever order we want. The first thing we can do is we could place dice down into our inventions to activate them. We can spend cogs to reroll dice, or we can spend cogs to increase the value. We can also use our light bulbs in order to activate all of our light bulb spots. So let's go ahead and do that right from the very beginning because we want more red dice. So first of all, this coal burner is just going to get us a die from the supply. So we add that in. Oh, nice. It's a 4. And then over here, this one is going to let us either remove a red die that's inside of our engine, which we don't have any right now, or we could take 2 cogs from the supply, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we also have this cheat card if you'll remember, but we probably don't want to use this just yet because we know that the first couple spots on the racetrack are really easy going. We want to save that for when we hit those really nasty hills. So now let's add dice into our engine. Whenever you put dice down, collectively you sum all the pips up. So in this case, this would be 6 power, and then we divide 6 by 3, and that would be 2 regular movement. So we take our racer here and we move 2 up on the track. And at this point, I think we're done. We probably don't want to use this cheat card yet. Let's wait till a better time, and we don't want to spend these cogs because we already put the dice down, so let's move on to Thomas Edison. The first thing he does is spend his light bulb in order to gain 2 yellow dice from the supply and roll them. Now he's going to spend 1 cog in order to increase the pip value from 1 to a 2. And he's going to throw this 6 value onto his induction motor, which is pretty much the same as ours, and he's going to get 2 movement because 6 divided by 3 is 2. So he catches up with us on the track. George Carver rolls the blue dice that he acquired earlier. He gets a 3 and a 2. Now he's going to spend his light bulb. He'll get 1 armor right from his main chassis here. So we go up to the +1 slot on our little armor tracker here. Also, his main coach, it gets him 2 cogs or another armor. Now, there's not a whole lot of mountains coming up, so I think he's going to grab 2 cogs, and then he's going to immediately spend both of these to add 2 to this 3, bringing it up to a 5. He decides to spend this cog and re-roll this die here. Well, that ended up being just 1 more anyway, so he'll spend both of these cogs here to turn this into a 5 as well. And he's going to put both these 5s down on hover jets. Now, this is interesting. He can either get a movement and a blue die removal, or he can get an armor and a blue die removal. He definitely doesn't need more armor, so each of these 5s is going to, well, that's 10 total. He gets to do this twice, so he'll get 2 movement, and he gets to remove 2 blue dice, which is really nice for him because it clears out his hover jets to use later. And that brings him up to the 2nd level as well. We are all tied at the 2nd spot. At this point, everybody looks at their damage markers to make sure nobody is below 0. At this point, nobody is. We're at 0, Thomas Edison is at 0, and George Carver is actually at +1. So we'll skip the damage section, and I'll explain how damage works pretty soon. And now we're at the end of the round. Everybody will discard all unused dice, but we all used all of ours. Everybody's light bulb gets turned back on, and then we flip this token here to show that we're going to be passing the opposite direction for the draft on the new turn. Alright, so it's turn 2, and we'll begin by having every player draw 1 from the top of each of these stacks, and let's draft again. Alright, so let's look at what we got. Flywheel, well, we know what that does. It lets us store dice between rounds, but right now that doesn't really do much for us. Or we could discard this for red dice, and that is not a bad option. We do generate red die here, but let's see what else we got. A flash boiler. So this is interesting. This little star pattern, this means it doesn't matter what die you put here, you're going to activate this once when you put that die down. So we could use red to get 2 blue dice, but we don't currently need blue dice. We might find something that needs blue dice later, like this one right here. This one, for each die you put down, doesn't matter what the number is, you would generate a movement and an electricity. Man, electrical die, but we don't, I kind of want both of these cards at the same time, but we don't have that ability. And then lastly, let's look. The catalytic reactor, this would let us remove a die, a red die, which is nice. And then we could discard machine parts to get a bunch more dice, but our machine is tiny at this point, so I don't think this card is good. You know what, let's go ahead and take this penny farthing. We don't have a way to get blue dice yet, but we can acquire them later, and it's really powerful being able to put any die down to immediately get a movement and an electrical symbol. So we want to make use of this. Let's go ahead and put it down over here. Yeah, that works. Thomas Edison is going to take this gyrostat and add it into his invention. This lets him put yellow electricity dice on here, and you can divide by 1 and get that many cogs, so definitely a good way to get tons of cogs. And George Carver is just going to discard this generator to get the 2 blue dice that he's going to need in order to make these hover jets work. Alright, so we've got a step-up transformer which turns yellow dice into more yellow dice. We've got a drive wheel which turns blue dice into movement, but the problem is we can't put either of these down into our invention because we've run out of open valve spots. We've kind of maxed our engine out, and if we wanted to place either of these, we'd have to remove something, and we really like the stuff we've got already. So I think that pretty much just leaves us with this cavorite crystals. We can discard it for 2 cogs, or we can discard it for 1 of each of these dice. That will work out relatively well for us because we want red dice, we want blue dice. Blue dice makes yellow dice, and this makes yellow dice, so maybe we try to find something that not only gives us valves, but also uses yellow dice so we can do all sorts of stuff on our turn. Thomas Edison is going to discard this propeller just to take 2 yellow die from the supply. And George Carver decides to just throw a flywheel onto his invention as well. Alright, we are in luck. We got a copper card. You may have noticed that the copper cards always have 4 valves around them, whereas the silver and gold only have 1. So we definitely needed one of these copper cards. And this one uses electricity once to make movement. Well, actually that's great, because that cavernite crystal is going to give us a yellow die. Oh, this actually works out really well. I guess this would give us yellow dice as well. So either way, we're going to use this and put it down. It doesn't really matter at this point, so let's maybe break our engine apart, squeeze an anti-gravity device right in there. Thomas Edison decides to discard this catalytic reactor in order to grab 2 cogs from the bank. And George Carver is going to discard this step-up transformer in order to take 2 more blue dice from the bank. And we have been given a flash boiler, which is actually pretty freaking great. That's one of the ones we had in our first hand, and I guess nobody else really cared for it, but it's good for us because we can put any red die down here to get 2 blue dice and roll them. And we have ways to generate red dice, and we need blue dice, so we're going to have to break our engine apart a little bit in order to make this work, though. So let's go ahead and maybe take this naphtha engine, put it over here, put the flash boiler on top there, so the flash boiler and the coal burner, they're next to each other. That's nice. And then squeeze that up there. Yeah, that looks like a well-running engine. Thomas Edison is going to discard this drive wheel in order to take 2 more yellow dice. And George Carver is going to stash a boost for later. Okay, it's now the vent phase because it's not the first turn anymore, so we get to do it. And pretty much all that happens here is boost cards that say vent phase on them can be used, but neither of ours really do. Or you can spend cogs to reduce pip values on the dice in your engine. As you can see, the dice stay on there, and when they're there, we can't reuse it, so we want to get them out of our engine. They're kind of gumming up the works. For each cog that you spend, you lose 2 pips off a die. So I think we should definitely spend at least 1 cog in order to remove this die entirely, because that reduces it down to 0. And we could spend 2 more cogs to remove this die here, but I think having cogs around to maybe re-roll some of the dice we're going to get or add pips is going to be a little more important. There's lots of different things we can do on this turn, and right now I think we're only getting 2 red dice anyway, so let's go ahead and stop venting. Even though Thomas Edison has all of these cogs, he chooses not to vent anything right now. And George Carver doesn't have anything to vent because of these awesome hover jets, so let's get to the race. So the first thing we're going to want to do, I think, is discard this card to get a red, a blue, and a yellow die from the stock, because right now we have no dice. So let's go ahead and roll those, and oh, okay, let's see. Another thing I didn't even realize, I kind of forgot, that Lace Meitner can remove a red die whenever we use our light bulb action, and so this seems like a pretty good idea. I mean, removing this is the same as 2 cogs worth of discard, so yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Flip this over, we'll remove this red die from our engine, and then this thing over here is actually going to gain us a red die, so let's go ahead and roll that. Alright, so there's lots of different things we could do now. We could put this electricity into the anti-grav device to activate that and get some movement or armor. We could also throw the steam into the penny farthing and get some movement and some electricity. We could also throw some fire into the flame broiler and get a couple more blues. In fact, I think that's what I want to do. I want to take this 2 here, because the 2 isn't really doing much for us down here, and put it over here. That gets us 2 more blues, because I'm going to roll both of those and hopefully get a much smaller number than this 5 when it comes to throwing things into the penny farthing. In fact, I'm hoping for 2s and 1s. Oh, wow! That was awesome. Alright, so I can take both of these and plunk them down, and each one of these dice is going to activate this spot once. So that immediately gets us 2 movement, and it's going to get us 2 electricity dice. So here's the electricity. So we move 1 2 times on the board, and that unfortunately takes us through this terrain spot with a 1. That means we are going to take 1 damage on our damage gauge. Now, this doesn't affect us until the end of the round. We have a little bit of time to kind of fix this damage before it hurts our invention. There is one other cool thing about this spot. You'll notice that we kind of have a volcanic looking hut, and this icon shows a cog, an infinity symbol, and a red dice symbol. What this means is when you stop at this location, I can spend as many cogs as I want, 1 to 1, to get more red dice. And this is great for us because we only have this 1 red die left, and we have several red die spots that we could fill in. So I think let's go ahead and spend 1 cog and leave these 2 for later to get rid of these dice from our system. And then we're going to roll it, and we're going to hope for a 3 or higher. Oh, that'll do. All right, 5. I think now is probably a good time for us to spend our cheat card. So if you'll remember, we get to move 1 smooth movement if we have less than 8 parts. Unfortunately, we have more than 5, so we don't get 2 smooth movements, but let's take a look at the map. So we move once, and this is a 2 damage spot, but again, smooth movement means we don't take any damage for that, so we get to go here for free. So now let's go ahead and take one of these electrical dice and put it on here. It doesn't matter what the pips are, so we choose the lowest one, and we can either get a movement or a repair. Let's go ahead and repair that 1 damage we took and bring us back to 0. So now we have a bit of a problem. We have these great dice that give us lots of movement. We can spend a cog to make this a 6, and then we can move 4 times. But the problem is that if we look at the spot on the board, if we do regular movement into this next spot, it's going to give us a damage, and that'll make us go negative again. And at the end of the turn, for every negative point that we have to discard an entire piece of our invention. We kind of like most of our pieces to our invention, but we have that 5 and 6 of red, which would let us move 3 or 4 spaces, which is quite a bit, getting us ahead of our opponents. This is a race, and I think our machine is going to have to pay the toll for that. So let's go ahead and put both these dice down. We're not going to increase this to a 6 because it would push us into a spot that's going to take even more damage, and I think we need to cool it with the damage after this because we're kind of small, but that, when you divide it, is going to give us 3 movement. So we go 1, 2, 3. This leaves us in a nice spot. We can choose later if we want to take the shortcut that takes a lot of damage or the long way, but unfortunately that terrain is going to put us back into the negative. And at this point we have extra dice, but we don't have anything else to do with them, so let's move on to the next player. Thomas Edison is going to begin by rolling all of these dice, and he rolled quite high. Before he goes any further, he's going to turn his light bulb off to roll 2 more yellow dice. So he has an incredible amount of electricity here. Okay, since there is no limit to the amount of cogs you can have, he's going to put the 6 down here, divided by 1. That gets him 6 cogs right away, so he's got tons of cogs to play with. He knows there's some mountains coming up, so he's going to go ahead and take the 6 and the 3, put that down on the arachno legs, which is going to get him a total of 3 movement or 3 health. He's going to go ahead and bump up his armor by 3 on his track here. If you go past 3, you just hit this cog, you take another cog from the supply and it goes back down, so not a great reason to go to 4. And now he's going to take these 2 dice, put them down on here, that's a total of 10, you divide that by 3, that's 3 movement. So he moves 1, 2, 3, and that suffers 3 damage to his machine. Fortunately he was at +3, so that just brings him back down to 0. And the last thing he'll do is take this 1 yellow die and put it into his flywheel, and he'll be able to use that on the next turn. George Carver is going to start by rolling 4 dice. He's going to begin by putting 2 of these 5s down on hover jets, and for both of them he's actually going to take this movement action, and once you do the movement you actually get to remove a die, so they both get automatically removed. That's going to move him 2 times on the board, and he's going to suffer 1 damage, which brings him back down to 0. Now he's going to burn this cog to add 1 pip to this 4, making it a 5, and he's going to put it back down on hover jets again to immediately remove it and go up again on the racetrack. That's going to move him to this spot here, which takes him 2 damage, bringing him down to -2. Fortunately for him, he hasn't used his light bulb yet, so we'll flip that over, which gets him 1 shield, and then over here he can either take a shield or 2 cogs. He'll go ahead and take the shield, so that repairs both damage on his invention. And lastly, he's just going to put this blue die onto the flywheel to save it for the next turn. Alright, now it's time to take damage, and unfortunately we're the only ones who have any damage, so both the opponents don't have to remove anything, but we are at -1, which means a piece of our invention has to get ripped off. And once we remove 1, it will go back to 0. The problem is that we have a really good invention right now, and there's kind of, the weakest part about this engine is this naphtha engine right here. It's kind of boring, but we can't get rid of it, because if we get rid of it, then we won't be able to put our invention back together again. We have 2 of these guys that both need to attach down and only down, and this is the only thing in our entire invention that can take a down attachment. I mean, this can, but you need to be able to pass through always back to the pilot, so we can't get rid of this without getting rid of something else. So realistically, it's got to be one of these other things. We can't get rid of this because then our whole machine falls apart. It's kind of a linchpin, plus it's really good. We could get rid of this, but it's nice being able to get a red die every turn. We could get rid of this, but it's nice being able to use that red die to get the 2 blue dice, which we use. It's such a good synergy. But ultimately, I think we're going to get rid of the coal bunker. Man, this is really tough. I'm really not sure what the right decision is, but we're going to get rid of this one because I really like the way we can spend a little bit of red to get all these blue that we need down here, because the blue down here gets us the yellow that we need over here. That works very well together. We'll just need to find other ways to get red to keep our engine going. So it's the end of a turn. We are going to discard all these dice, unfortunately. We didn't have an ability to use them when we have no way to store them. Then everybody turns their light bulbs back on. The draft direction flips over, and let's draw some cards. So we got some polarized shielding, which lets us use electricity at a reasonable rate to get us armor. And as you can see, armor is nice because you don't have to rip your invention apart. This generator turns blue into yellow. Well, we already turned blue into yellow, so this is really not good for us. The drive wheel turns blue at a really good rate, but just one die, into movement. But I think this is going to be the thing we want to do, the difference engine. I think we're just going to discard this thing to get 4 cogs. We've got a bunch of dice kind of in our system, and remember, you can discard 1 cog to remove 2 pips. We have very few cogs at this point, so I think we are going to take this boost to get those cogs. Edison is going to attach a set of wings to the top of his invention. It's got a pretty bad conversion rate of blues, but it gives you smooth movement, so you can fly over those really nasty terrain spots. George Carver is going to attach a flywheel to the bottom of his engine, and this one just takes blue, converts very well into movement. And now we get our 3 cards, and we see, much to our chagrin, that we got a flash boiler, which is the other one. If we discarded this, we could have made that great engine keep working. But you know what? That's just the way the game works. I don't think we have any need for a second flash boiler. We got Repair Clause. This removes all dice with 3 or fewer pips that currently occupy slots in your invention. This is potentially, actually, this is really good for us. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 dice. This would remove 4 dice from our invention. We might have to go with this. And the last thing is a flywheel. Lets us store dice between rounds. That would have been nice last round for sure. We threw all those dice away, but I think we got to take these repaired claws. That removing 4 dice is huge. Thomas Edison is going to discard this generator to get 2 blue dice from the supply. George Carver is going to add this boiler to the front of his invention. It lets him very easily turn heat dice into steam. Alright, so we've got a thermocouple which lets us turn red heat dice into yellow electricity dice plus cogs, which is nice. And we got Repair Clause again. Well, we already have a Repair Claw. We could save this for the future, or we could just discard this for 2 red dice, which probably makes sense. We're going to be clearing all this stuff out. We want to be able to have at least 1 red die to make our engine do that awesome thing that it did last turn. So let's go ahead and discard this. Thomas Edison is just going to discard this flash boiler for 2 cogs. He already has tons of cogs, but as you can see, he has a lot of dice he needs to vent out of his engine. And George Carver is going to discard this polarizing shield to grab 2 red dice from the supply. Alright, so we've been given a drive wheel. So we could discard it for yellow electricity dice, which we don't want. We could take cogs. We know we have 4 more cogs in this difference engine boost down here. I think what we're going to do is actually just install this drive wheel down here, because we know we're going to be rolling 2 dice, 2 blue heat dice, and if we get like a 6, we can put it down here and get 3 movement, or if we get low numbers, we can put it over here and get some easy movement and electricity. That kind of works out well. Thomas Edison is given this Repair Clause, which is not great for him. He's only got 2 dice that this would apply to. It would essentially save him 3 cogs. He could discard this for 2 cogs, but I think he's actually going to discard this just to take a single electricity yellow die in order of hopes of rolling a 6 with one of these yellows to activate the styrostat again. And George Carver discards this for 2 cogs because he is out of cogs. Alright, it's venting time, so let's go ahead and discard this difference engine in order to get 4 cogs from the bank. And then, let's go ahead and use these Repair Clause because it says playable during the vent phase only, so we remove all dice with 3 or fewer pips. So that is all of these dice. That's really great for us. Now we're left with 6 cogs, and if we look over here, both of these cost 3 cogs to remove. That's a little steep. We know we only need 1 red die to activate this, and we have 2 open slots here, so I think let's just hold on for the moment, not vent the rest of this, and keep these cogs for later. Thomas Edison has 13 cogs, and he's definitely going to start spending them. He'll spend these 3 right here in order to get rid of this 6. He's going to spend 3, 4, 5 more to get rid of these dice. And then he's going to spend 3 more to remove both of these dice. And George Carver has nothing to vent because obviously this is just a stored die. Okay, it's time to race. So let's roll these 2 dice, see what we get. Oh my goodness, 2 6s. That is actually really unfortunate. We only wanted 1 high number. We want a low number for this flash boiler here. But let's go ahead and see how this plays out. Let's put this 6 down, and that's going to generate us 2 blue dice. Alright, so let's put this 4 down here because it's a nice low value. That's going to get us a yellow electricity dice as well as 1 regular movement. That's going to move us over here. Unfortunately, this is a 2 damage terrain, so we go down to -2 on our track. Man, this is unfortunate. We rolled a 6. Again, this is a die that we wanted to be really low. In fact, Let's discard a cog. Let's see what happens. Let's discard this cog to re-roll the die. All right, that was definitely worth it. So let's put this 2 down here, and that lets us either get a movement or we can heal up once. So we get to go down to -1 on our track. That's not quite as bad. Now let's go ahead and place this 6 steam die down on the drive wheel. We divide that by 2. That gives us 3 regular movement. And that brings us 1, 2, 3 all the way there. So now let's take this 6 on the heat die and we're going to throw it into our naphtha engine. This might end up hurting. We divide 6 by 3. That gives us 2 movement, which is going to bring us over here, which unfortunately means we take another damage and we have no way of reducing damage. So we're going to lose 2 parts to our machine this turn. And finally, let's turn the light bulb off in order to remove a red die from our invention. Let's get rid of this one from the flash boiler. Alright, that's all we can do. Thomas Edison is going to start by rolling these dice plus the 1 from his last turn. And then he'll go ahead and turn his light out in order to roll 2 more yellow electricity dice. He's going to spend 1 of his cogs in order to re-roll 1 of these 1s. And then he's going to take this 6 and 3, plunk him down into the induction motor. That's 9 divided by 3, or 3 regular movement. So this means he moves 1, 2, 3 times, but he's going to take 1 damage on his damage wheel. Now he's going to take both of these yellow dice and throw them down into his arachno legs, and he's going to actually turn that into a 4 divided by 3 and only get a single movement out of it. And he decides to go down the shortcut way there. Lastly, he's going to take 1 of these blue 6s, throw it down onto the wings, and that is, when you divide by 4, that's 1 smooth movement. And this allows Edison to fly into the next zone, so since it's a smooth movement, he doesn't take these 3 terrain damage. Now it's time for George Carver. He's going to roll these 2 red dice, plus the blue die he saved from last turn. He's going to take this 6 and 3 and plunk them down here, that's 9, and when you divide 9 by 2, that's going to get him 4 blue dice. So he'll roll all of those. He's going to spend a cog to make this 5 into a 6, and then plunk that down on the drive wheel to get 3 movement. That's going to take him 1, 2, 3, but he's going to take 1 terrain damage that shows up on his wheel. Next up, he's going to take this 3 and a 2 and put it on the hover jets. That equals 5, which lets him do one of these 2 options. And he's going to take the movement and he's going to use that remove blue to actually get rid of this 6 down here. He's going to live dangerously and follow Thomas Edison down the dangerous path, a shortcut here. Now he's going to spend his light bulb and that'll get him an armor, and then over here he's going to take another armor. So that's going to put him up to +1. And the last thing, I think George Carver is going to decide just to save both of these dice instead of using it quite inefficiently on the drive wheel, especially considering it would put him right into that 3 damage mountain. It's time to take some damage, and unfortunately we're taking 2 of it. In our small little engine here, we need to lose 2 different parts. The first thing we're going to get rid of is this naphtha engine. It has all these huge dice on it. It'd be annoying to get them off anyway. We don't have that many cogs, so this gets destroyed and we can kind of move the flash boiler over. And you know what? We are in the lead in the race right now, so I think we can suffer losing this drive wheel. It's got a really big number on it. It's kind of annoying to get rid of. Have to spend lots of cogs. We can move a little bit, kind of slowly with this combo. We still kind of have the combo going, but man, our invention got tiny. And now Thomas Edison needs to suffer 1 damage, losing a part on his machine. I think it's probably going to be the induction motor. That's just chock full of huge dice. He's only got 1 cog to his name right now. And as you can see, George Carver is at +1, so he takes no damage. Alright, that's the end of the round. As you can see, we are still slightly ahead, even though our invention is really tiny. Everybody's going to turn their light bulbs back on, and let's flip the draft order. It's time for everybody to draw their draft hand. Alright, so we've got an Apergy manipulator, which would get us a yellow die, and we could change the value of 2 dice in our dice pool. That's pretty powerful. Got vacuum brakes. We could use any red die to save 1 health and get a cog. That's nice, but right now we don't have a way to necessarily make those red dice. This naphtha canister, we could spend a electricity die to make 2 red die. That's quite good, although we're a bit cyclical right now. Red die make blue, and then blue die make yellow, and then yellow die would make red. We can only go around that so many times. And lastly, okay, here we go, arachno legs. We can spend yellow electricity dice to get movement or to heal ourselves. And we've been taking so much damage, we can't take too much more damage, and there are a couple really nasty hills we need to get over. So let's go ahead and build these arachno legs so that we have the ability to not only move, but also heal ourselves more. Thomas Edison is going to add this steam vent, which lets him spend any blue to actually get rid of a blue and get a cog. George Carver is going to sneak a boost underneath his damage tracker. Alright, so we've got a superheater. We can spend any blue to get 2 red and a cog, which is kind of interesting because we could spend any red to get 2 blue. They can definitely feed into each other, getting us a lot more dice than we really need right now. We've got an ion thruster. This one's pretty intense. You could put yellow electricity dice down and get 2 movement for every 5 that you put down there, and you could remove red dice, and we might have a red die, although we kind of always can remove red dice. And lastly, we've got mass ejection. If you have at least 3 machine parts, or you lose at least 3 machine parts during your damage phase, you get to remove a red, remove a blue, get 2 smooth movement, and everybody else gets to pick up cogs, which I guess is the debris from your exploding invention. Well, unfortunately, we are not really in a position to lose 3 things from our invention, so this probably does not make sense. The superheater doesn't really either. The ion thruster, I really want it, but we also need yellow dice, and right now we don't have any because we want yellow electricity dice for this down here. And I guess all we really need is a red in order to get us a blue, and then we can use the blue to get the yellow and kind of cycle it around. Although this is only going to get us 1 yellow die, and this is unfortunate. This is really stinking powerful, but I think we're going to discard this for 2 yellow electricity dice. Thomas Edison is going to build another set of arachno legs to match his first set down at the bottom here. George Carver is going to put another boost card underneath his damage token. Alright, so we've got polarized shielding, which lets us turn electricity into health, which is good, although we have a couple healthy things now and we need to get electricity into our system. We do have these 2 already. And then we got a boiler here. We can turn red into blue. Well, we already can do that. This does get us blue dice. I don't think this card is good for us at all. It would be really nice to have this polarized shielding, but I think we're going to have to discard this to get the 2 red dice. We just can't be sure that we're going to get a red die card from Thomas Edison, and yeah, let's be sure. So let's go ahead and discard this. Thomas Edison is going to discard this for the 2 cogs, and George Carver is going to discard this for 2 cogs. Alright, let's see what we got. Oh man, it's a naphtha canister. This is a way we could have made the red. We didn't need to discard that last turn. Oh well, we've got this now, and we can't actually add it onto anything. There's nowhere to put it, which is a bit unfortunate. We don't really need blue dye because we have the red dye to turn into the blue dye, so I think let's just go ahead and discard this for the cogs. Thomas Edison is going to discard this mass ejection to just grab a yellow dye from the supply. And lastly, George Carver is going to take 2 cogs from the supply as well. Okay, so it's the venting phase, and let's go ahead and get rid of some of this stuff. We'll spend 1 cog to remove the 2 pips off of this guy. And what the heck, let's spend 2 cogs to get this guy out of there as well. We have a nice, clean, empty invention. Thomas Edison decides not to vent anything, and George Carver decides to spend 3 cogs in order to clear out his hover jets, but George Carver also has this boost that he's going to play now because it's only during the vent phase. It's an electromagnet. He gets 1 movement for each invention in front of them on the racetrack up to a max of 5, and then the inventions in first place move backwards once. There are 2 inventions ahead of him on the track, so he gets to go 1, 2, which is going to incur 3 damage to his machine. It's going to bring him down to -2. But also we are in front, which means we move 1 back, which is terrible because that means we have to go through this damage spot again. Alright, so now we're all really close to each other and it's time to race. So let's roll all these dice here. This isn't too bad. Let's take this red 2 and put it down there to get 2 blue steam dice. We'll roll those and see what we get. 5 and a 2. Let's throw this 1 down on our anti-grav device in order to heal up our armor, actually going to +1 because we know we have to go through that spot again. I'm going to throw this 2 down on the penny farthing. That's going to give us 1 movement, but it also gets us a yellow electricity die. Ooh. That movement is going to bring us back into that 1 damage terrain, which brings us back down to 0. So now we have a couple options. We could throw the yellow dice down and move a bunch or heal ourselves. We could put this 5 down here to activate and go a movement, but that's really annoying. Like, this is hard to vent. It costs 3 cogs. I'm not sure if I want to do that just yet. I think what we do want to do is spend 2 of these cogs to increase the value of this 4 all the way to a 6, and then plunk both of these 6 down onto these arachno legs. You add that up, that's 12 divided by 3. That's 4 movement or health or a little bit of both. Looking at the map, I think we should go 1, 2 movement. That brings us to a -2 terrain. So we're going to go down to -2, and I think we'll spend those last 2 from the arachno legs, bringing us back up to 0. Now once again, this game is not about crossing the finish line first, it's about being the farthest ahead on the finish line when the game ends. Once somebody crosses this line, we're going to finish out that turn and do 1 more full round. But we do have 1 or 2 more options. We have our light bulb, so let's go ahead and turn that off. It lets us remove a red die from anywhere, so we can get rid of this red die, which will allow us to put this one in its place, and that's going to get us 2 more steam dice, and we're going to roll these and hope for a really small number to make that penny farthing go. Oh my gosh, that is unfortunate. Well, you know what? It's a race, so let's go ahead and throw this down. It might be a really bad idea, but what the heck. We get an extra electricity die, which we can do nothing with, and we get one more movement. This brings us over to this electrical factory, which is kind of cool. We can spend cogs at 1-to-1 rate to grab a bunch of electricity die. We don't really want to do that now, but that might be really nice for us next turn. All right, time for Thomas Edison to roll these 2 dice here, and then go ahead and spend his light bulb to roll these 2 other electrical yellow dice. He's going to take this blue die and put it into his steam vent, which lets him remove a blue die from somewhere else and get a cog, and he's going to go ahead and kick this blue die out. He's going to risk it and spend 1 of these cogs to re-roll this 1 to try and get something much better than that. Oh my goodness, that worked really well for him. He's going to try his luck one more time, throw 1 more cog away and try to roll this 2 into something bigger than that. Alright, okay, well that worked out okay. He's going to take this 5 and activate the gyrostat, which is going to turn into 5 cogs. And then he's going to take both of these 6s, plunk them down on the arachno legs, and that gives him 4 activations. This is a race game after all, so he decides to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to suffer him 1 damage for going across that terrain. Alright, George Carver is going to roll these 2 dice here. Then he's going to go ahead and flip his light bulb over to get 1, 2 armor back. He was at -2. That brings him back to 0. He's going to spend a cog in order to turn this 5 into a 6, and he'll throw it down onto the drive wheel, divide that by 2, that's going to give him 3 movement. So he goes 1, 2, 3, and he's going to suffer 1 damage for going across that location, bring him down to -1. And now he's going to spend 1 cog to turn this 4 into a 5. He's going to activate his hover jets. He's going to do the armor side, so he goes from -1 to 0, and then he gets to remove a blue die from anywhere. He'll kick out this drive wheel 6. Now it's time for damage, and only Thomas Edison has any. It's only -1, so he needs to discard a single card from his entire invention here, and he's going to kick out these arachno legs, mostly because they just have so many pips on them. That's just too many cogs to get rid of. It's the end of the round, so let's flip the draft order token over. Everybody turns their light bulbs back on. We begin the next turn, and everybody draws 4 cards. So we've got some galvanic brakes. They let us turn electricity into heat and health, which is kind of nice, and we could also discard it for red cubes. We got a boiler, turns red dice into blue dice. That's not particularly good for us. Got another penny farthing. Those blue dice turning into movement and electricity. That is interesting, although we have nowhere to put it right now inside of our invention. And then, oh, let's see here. This is a resonance-based earthquake inducer. Everyone on a space with a mountain takes damage, and then I could put a cog from the supply onto the racetrack, and you ignore all mountains there for the rest of the game. Well, that's really interesting. This is only usable in the vent phase, though, and right now nobody is on any of those mountain ranges, so I don't think there's a particular reason to take this. You know what? I think we have to take this galvanic brakes and install them because we just need spots in order to build other cool stuff for this round. I kind of want to discard it to get the red dice, but we just can't put things into our machine. It's not big enough, so we put that there, and our invention gets a little bit bigger. Thomas Edison is going to add a combustion chamber to his invention. He gets to spend any electricity die to get a cog and some blue. George Carver is going to build treads. He's got to do some manipulation to his engine, though. He slide this forward, and then he can plunk the treads down right there. All right, we've got a naphtha canister. We can spend electricity to get a couple heat, kind of closing the loop for us. We've got a thermocouple. That is not that interesting. We can spend red to get electricity and some cogs. And then we have polymerization. Oh, that's nice. It heals 1 of our damage, and we can discard any number of dice to get a bunch of cogs. I think what we really need is red dice to roll for this flame boiler. So let's go ahead and discard this thermocouple to get those 2 dice. Thomas Edison is going to build penny farthings into the bottom of his engine down here. And George Carver is going to discard this heatsink in order to take 2 red dice from the supply. Well, this is kind of interesting. We could put another penny farthing down, which is quite good because we have the ability to, we're going to roll these 2 red dice. We can put one down, remove it, and put another one down, getting us 4 blue dice to use this turn, and we could use them on the penny farthing. No matter what you roll those dice, you're going to get movement out of them, and they would give us yellow electrical dice, which we could use in our arachno legs, and heck, we can make more red dice and heal out of it. So that's a really kind of a cool combo. But the flip side is we have this difference engine who could just give us 4 cogs. And we do have some stuff that we'd really like to remove, but I think this combo is too interesting. Let's go ahead and throw another penny farthing down there. We're kind of flanking the arachno legs with it. Thomas Edison's just going to slide this boost underneath his armor token. George Carver's going to discard this boiler to take 2 blue from the supply. And we've been past the resonance-based earthquake inducer. Let's go ahead and keep this as a boost. Thomas Edison's going to throw this boost underneath his tracker as well. And George Carver's going to discard this naphtha canister to grab 2 cogs from the bank. Alright, it's time to vent, and we only have 2 cogs. I didn't think that one entirely through, but that's okay. We will remove both of these dice. And you know what? Let's use this earthquake inducer. Nobody is currently on a mountain, so they're not going to take damage, but we can put a cog down and destroy a mountain. And look at here, we have a 2 damage on either side of the finish line. Let's destroy the mountain on the other side of the finish line. Hopefully we can get over the finish line, induce the end game, and not take a penalty for that in case they don't catch up to us. Thomas Edison's going to use this boost right here to get 4 cogs. And then he's going to start spending these cogs. He's going to spend 2 to clear the arachno legs here. He'll spend another 1 in order to clear this steam vent here. And then, what the heck, he'll spend 3 to clear this 5. And George Carver decides not to vent anything. He wants to save these tokens. Alright, it's time to race. So let's go ahead and roll all of our dice. And that's fine. We're going to go ahead and take, let's see here. Actually, let's put this 6 down on there. And that's going to generate 2 blue dice, which we can then roll. And they are unfortunately quite high. But we can take this 4, put it down on the penny farthing. That's going to generate us an electricity die. And it's going to give us a movement. So we move forward 1 more to the finish line, 2 more, and we're going to instigate the end of the game. Next up, let's turn our light bulb over in order to discard this red die and put another one down. This lets us roll 2 more blue dice. Let's hope we get a really low result. And okay, that's good enough, I suppose. Let's take this 3 and put it on the penny farthing. That's going to get us another electrical die, and here we hope we get a 3 or higher. Okay, wow, that was way too high. Actually, it's not that bad when you think about it. But we can't forget about that movement we just got. That's going to bring us 1 away from the finish line, but we are going to take 2 damage for going into that specific terrain. And this actually works out really well for us because we did roll the 6. I was worried at first because I only wanted a 3 and I didn't want to have to kick it out, but you can divide 6 in half by this 3 and get 2 charges of that. So that's going to get us 2 red dice, which we're not going to use at all. And it also gives us 2 health. That brings us back to 0. And the great thing about this is we can now use this yellow die on the anti-grav device, and we can get a movement instead of healing because the galvanic brakes brought us right back up to 0. And thanks to our earthquake resonance device, we destroy this mountain range, we don't take any damage, and we've crossed the finish line. This means we are only going to do 1 more turn after that, and the winner is going to be the person the farthest down the track. So that's pretty good news. Unfortunately, we have no cogs, and we have a million dice in our system, so we'll see if we'll be able to actually stay ahead in the very last turn of the game. As it is, we kind of wasted all of these dice, but that's okay. Thomas Edison's going to turn over his light bulb in order to roll 2 yellow dice. Oh my gosh, that's pretty high. Unfortunately for him, he didn't really want a high result, but he's got to put this down here anyway. That's going to generate 2 blue dice for him, and that's going to get him a cog from the bank. He's going to throw this 4 up onto the wings, which will give him a smooth movement. That's going to let him fly into this mountain and take no damage. Now he's going to take this 6, which is unfortunately high. In fact, you know what? He's going to risk it. He's going to spend 1 of these cogs to try and re-roll this to get something much lower than that. That's way better. He's going to put this 2 down on the penny farthing, which is going to generate 1 movement, and that gets him another electricity die. So with that 1 movement, he goes over here, and now he's actually at the electrical factory, so he can spend cogs at 1-to-1 to grab more electricity dice if he wants to. He decides to spend 1 cog in order to generate 1 electricity from that factory. And now he'll spend a cog in order to make this 5 turn into a 6, and he's going to drop both these 6s down onto the arachno legs, which is going to give him 4 total charges of either movement or health. With that, he decides to steam on ahead and go 1, 2, 3, 4, so he actually gets ahead of us, dang it. But he does take 2 damage in the process. He's fine with that because now he's going to reveal his polymerization, which is going to heal him up once. He can also discard any number of dice to get cogs. He doesn't really want to do that, he just wanted the heal. So that brings him down to -1, and finally he'll go ahead and throw this 4 down onto the gyrostat. That's going to get him 4 cogs from the bank. Now it's George Carver's turn. He's got these dice to roll. He'll start by throwing both of these red dice onto his boiler. That is 9 total divided by 2. That's going to get him 4 more blue dice. Now he's going to spend 1 of these cogs in order to turn a 5 into a 6, and he's going to throw it down onto his drive wheel. This is great because you divide that by 2, that's going to give him 3 movement. So he goes 1, 2, 3, and he's going to suffer 2 damage when he goes over that particular mountain. And he's actually got a pretty amazing system here because he can put this 5 down onto hover jets, which is going to get him either a movement or a health, and he gets to remove a blue die. So he's going to take the movement, I think, and he's going to remove this die, which clears up the drive wheel. This moves him forward once, but he's also going to take 2 more damage, which is going to bring him down to -4. But at this point, he's going to spend both of his boosts. The first one is going to get him a yellow die, which gets him a 6, and then he can change up to 2 dice in his pool to any pip values. So he's going to take this 1 and turn it into a 6, and then he's going to take this 3 and he's going to turn that into a 6 as well. And his other boost is Polymerization, which immediately heals him up once, so he goes up to -3. And then he can discard any number of dice to take that many cogs. He's going to go ahead and get rid of these 2 dice here to grab 2 cogs from the bank. And this is great for him because now he can take another 6 and plug it down on the drive wheel, getting 3 more movement, which is going to take him 1, 2, 3 and put him in the lead. And then he takes these 2, which total up to 10, divide that by 2. That gives him 2 movement and 2 health, so it brings him down to -1. And with 2 more movement, he is now clearly in the lead. Unfortunately for us, he's not quite done yet because now he flips over his light bulb. He's going to heal once, and instead of healing, he's going to take 2 more cogs from the bank, so he ends his turn at 0. The only person with any damage is Thomas Edison, so he goes back to 0, taking 1 damage, and he's fine with getting rid of this flywheel here because his wings just kind of slide down there. Alright, we discard all the dice we didn't use, which is this for us, unfortunately. We turn our light bulbs back on, we flip the draft order, and now everybody's going to draw 1 more drafting phase. This will be the final turn of the game. So right off the bat, we know we are in a lot of trouble, unfortunately. We have no cogs, and man, we have so many dice in our system. We should probably spend quite a few turns getting cogs, unfortunately. So we see here, we've got a thermocouple. We can spend red to get yellow and a cog, but I don't think that's going to do much for us. This lets us turn yellow into more yellow, a step-up transformer, but there's no real reason for that to do much for us. Treads, this is great for earlier in the game, but now there are no more damage that we're going to take, so this is just a really inefficient way to move forward. And the Apogee Manipulator. Now this is interesting. It does let us change 2 dice to any pip values we want, and we get a yellow. Oh man, that might be worth it as long as we are able to clear out these yellows. Ultimately, I think this is too powerful, but we need the cogs. So let's discard this so that nobody else gets access to it and take those 2 cogs. Thomas Edison's going to discard this superheater and just take 2 blues from the bank. George Carver's going to put some ion thrusters onto his invention. Unfortunately, we've got to make a little bit more space for that to fit. He's got a very long invention here. We've got a disintegrator ray, which makes all opponents take damage if they have really big inventions. Unfortunately, damage doesn't really do anything at this point. We got an auger, which is really good at smooth movements, kind of burrowing through the mountain, but there are no more mountains to deal with, and a time machine, which helps us heal up and get cogs. But this is going to happen after we vent. We really need cogs before we vent, so let's just go ahead and discard this disintegrator ray to take 2 more cogs from the supply. Thomas Edison is going to discard this Greek fire, which lets you kind of burn a space on the board and remove some heat dice. He's just going to discard it for 2 cogs. He's got lots of cogs already, but he wants to spend them. George Carver is going to discard these treads to just take 2 electrical dice from the supply. Alright, we've got a boiler, which turns red into blue, which we can already do, and we got galvanic brakes, which we already have one of those, turning electricity into heat and healing. More importantly, though, we need cogs, but we also need red to make our whole engine kind of cycle through. So let's go ahead and discard this to take these 2 red dice. Thomas Edison is going to add this step-up transformer into his machine right here. It's going to let him turn electricity dice into even more electricity dice. George Carver is just going to discard this time machine to grab 2 cogs from the bank. Alright, lastly, we've been given a thermocouple. We can turn red into yellow and a cog, but no, we just want more cogs from the bank, so let's discard this, taking 2 more cogs. Thomas Edison is going to do a similar thing. He's just going to discard this auger to take 2 cogs from the supply. And George Carver is going to discard this boiler to take 2 blue from the supply. Alright, it's time to vent, and we have 8 cogs at our disposal, so we certainly want to free up our flash boiler to make that work, and we certainly want to discard this one to get our anti-grav device going. We got a cheap penny farthing one. We can spend 1 cog to get rid of this 2. We don't really care about galvanic brakes, and they're really expensive. Unfortunately, we do care about the arachno legs a little bit, but they are really jammed up here. We know we're going to have 2 blue dice no matter what, so let's make sure we clear up 1 more of these penny farthings. So let's spend 2 of these cogs to get rid of this 3. And I guess we'll spend all 3 of our remaining cogs getting rid of 1 of these 6s. Thomas Edison's going to spend 3 to get rid of this 6 here, He's going to spend 3 to get rid of this 6 here, and what the heck, another 3 to get rid of this 6. Finally, I think it's worth it for him to spend these last 2 cogs to get rid of this 4 from the wings. George Carver decides to spend these 2 3s to remove a 5 and to remove a 6. Alright, it's time to race, so let's go ahead and roll these 2 red guys. Wow, okay, those are nice and low. Let's put that on here, which will get us 2 more blue steam dice from the bank. We can go ahead and take one of these steam dice, put on the penny farthing. That's going to get us an electric die from the bank and a movement, which ties us for last place. Woohoo! We can put this other blue die down onto this other penny farthing. That's going to get us another electricity die, and we get 1 more movement. I'm starting to think we're going to come dead last. And the last things realistically we can do is we can put this 6 down here, which you divide by 3 is going to get us 2 movements, and what the heck, let's throw this one down here, which gets us 1 movement, so that's 3 more movement. So we go 1, 2, 3, we are briefly in the lead. And unfortunately, there's nothing really to do with this light bulb. We could turn it over and remove this red die, or we could just get a couple cogs. Neither of those things affect anything else we could do with our engine. Thomas Edison rolls his 2 blue dice. He's also going to turn over his light bulb to roll 2 yellow dice. He's going to use both of his electricity dice, put them into his step-up transformer. That is 9 divided by 2. That gives him 4 more electricity dice, so electricity into more electricity. He's going to throw this 1 into the combustion chamber, which is going to generate 2 blue dice and a single cog, which he can play with. Next up, he's going to take the 5 and 4, put them on the arachno legs. That is 9 divided by 3. That gets him 3 movement. So 1, 2, 3. And then he's going to activate his wings for a smooth movement, as well as the penny farthing, which does get him another yellow die, which he can't really use, and another movement. So he uses those 2 movement to go 1, 2. But he's got a little more up his sleeve because he can take this 4, put it on the steam vent. That lets him kick out a blue die, as well as gaining a cog, which is now going to let him take this 5 and put that down on wings, which gives him 1 more smooth movement. And this is going to be as far as he can get. George Carver rolls all 4 of these dice here. He's going to spend 1 cog in order to turn this 3 into a 4, and he adds that 4 with a 6. That is 10. You divide 10 by 5, you get 2, which is crazy. That's 4 movement, or 2 movement per activation, and he gets to remove 2 red dice from somewhere, not that that matters. So he roars 4 ahead, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because why not? He uses his light bulb to go up 2 health. It doesn't really matter, but you may as well use it. And then he can throw this 5 onto the drive wheel. You divide that by 2, that's going to be 2 more movement. 1, 2, and that is as far as he can get. So George Carver is the clear winner with Thomas Edison in a distant second, and we came pretty far last. Definitely a detriment to being ahead all game long, I think. Didn't have the things in place to have a big explosion at the very end of the game. But that was your 3-player full game of Steampunk Rally. Well, I hope you enjoyed that playthrough. It was a bit difficult keeping all of those different contraptions in my head at the same time, and I really didn't expect our character to lose quite that badly. I've found in this game that I just played and another game that I played before that the person who gets to the lead in the mid-game usually doesn't do very well at the end. So I think I need to figure out a better pacing to do reasonably well throughout the game and have a big explosion there at the end. But I think there is a great amount of engine building here. This is not a review. I'm probably going to do a more in-depth one relatively soon. But I can say my initial impressions of this game are quite positive. I've really enjoyed it. I am not usually crazy about drafting style, but it's a very cool way. You get 4 different types of parts, and then you put them right into your machine right away. So much of this game happens simultaneously. It says it plays 2 to 8 players. I've only played, this 3-player game and a 4-player game. I'm looking forward to maybe getting a much bigger game in. I think that could be kind of crazy having that many people out on the map at one time. Anyway, this is a really interesting game. It surprised me so far. I'm looking forward to playing it a bunch more, and as far as drafting is concerned, hand drafting, I'd say is probably one of my favorite at the moment. But anyway, that is enough for now. If you'd like to see more full game playthroughs like this one, as well as in-depth board game reviews and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. Also, you can directly support the channel at patreon.com/JohnGetsGames. Thanks for watching.